because I'm a rationalist, and that's what I do even today as an adult. I have the beliefs that I have, and when I have a reason to discard them and adopt new beliefs based on their truth value, then I do so. And that's what science does as well. So I was kind of already in the scientific mindset. I just didn't have anything to apply it to as a kid other than the Catholic worldview until actual science class gave me something to expand it to. Um, if you're saying you want to come up, the link should be pinned, and I just dropped it too. It's if you scroll up, it's a little should be up there. And I think the freak might come on as well. He wants to argue religion, and a tough guy. I know you're a Christian as well, I believe. So y'all are welcome to hop up. That's good advice for you, not loss. Strive for the superego. Okay, hang on. Oh, I didn't see you back there. Da da da.
My man. What's up, Jeff?
How you doing?
How you doing? Hey, okay, so since C19, what exactly about science do you actually believe is a good foundation to sink your feet into and say, I'm an immovable object?
Girl. C19's not going to alter my grounding in science, if that's what you were trying to do. Why did it change yours, or were you ever? Did you ever adopt any kind of scientific view of things?
Oh, I was a science guy. I still am a science guy. I believe in science. It's just that when C19 was floating around and everything, the medical side of science is basically all up in the air, from a trust, actual knowledge, actual pygmy, what do you call it? Guinea pig type of, quote unquote facts. It seems like it's all just one big drug industry to me at this point.
Well, yeah, because that's I would say that's mythologizing, because that's the story that you've built around this fact. But all of medical science didn't suddenly stop working because of something that happened in 2020 with this one virus. Like, medicine still works. Most things that doctors prescribe work for whatever reason they're prescribing. The human body still works like we've always understood it to work, etc. So it didn't upend the entire field of medical science. All that stuff still more or less works. And remember, science is an accumulating body of knowledge. So we're constantly updating our scientific knowledge as we learn more information through experimentation.
All right. So if I agree that I mythologize, then you have to agree that you just mythologized as well, because you said it. So it's kind of always changing. But let me go back to something before that. They do prescribe drugs, and thank God, drugs work. I'm on board with pharmaceuticals. Like, I know that drugs work because many reasons. They work. The molecular bonds that they are able to manipulate through pharmaceuticals are very effective, and they work right away, kind of a thing, as opposed to, say, like prayer or something that aren't drugs. Okay. That being said, we had the whole medical industry, whatever you want to call it, basically questioning themselves ever since then, like mask, no mask. As a real easy example, the food triangle, is a thing now. Like, they lied to us in the 50s or 60s or whenever that thing came out. It's all wrong. The vegan, non-vegan, the meat, the no meat, the coffee, the no coffee, constantly reversing their stance on whatever. And so the trust level that most people have for even their regular physician is as low as it's ever been at this point in time. So that's only one aspect of science. I realize that, but it's just
well, can I address that real quick? Because I wouldn't even call that science. The trust you're talking about is trust in institutions, but science itself is just a method and a technique. And so all the stuff you're describing is something other than science. Those are communications from certain institutions. And so you stop trusting those particular institutions that told you this information. But that the information itself is not science.
Well,
so science still worked. The scientific, just like COVID didn't invalidate chemistry and molecular biology and all the other stuff we developed before that. The food pyramid and whether to mask or not didn't invalidate how science works. It doesn't mean the scientific method still doesn't work. It didn't stop doing the thing that it was good at doing, that it was designed to do, etc. So you have to separate humans that are telling you things, are institutions, representatives of institutions that are telling you, from actual science and scientists doing science.
Okay. Well, you also have all those institutions that we're supposed to, have trust and faith in, telling us that they are the science, that specific people are saying they are the science. And if you don't believe him, then you don't believe in science. But that's just one little, political aspect of it. But
just ignore those people, because people that understand science don't mistake those people for science. They understand what science actually is, and it's not an institution telling you things. So people that think that that's science need some scientific literacy themselves.
Probably, but you see, science is incorporated by many different aspects of human life and stuff like that. So you have to me, the medical side of science, and the medical field, the medical profession has been basically shaken down to its core as to what is actually truth and real and foundational that they could stand on, other than the periodic table at this point. They don't know.
Well, you just agreed. You just agreed that like medicine still work and stuff. I wouldn't say shake it to its core.
Well, shake it down to chemical and the periodic table, which is molecular structure and formation and whatnot. So yeah, pharmaceuticals work. Other than that, they don't really know what the hell's going on. It seems to me.
Well, it doesn't seem like that to me. It seems like doctors pretty much still know how to do medicine.
I don't know.
What do you have doubts about now that you didn't before, as like unrelated to this one virus, like other medical could like yeah. you doubt that they know anything about anything now?
I doubt that
because they still seem to be able to treat a lot of illnesses like they have in the past. Yeah,
I would your basic stuff that comes down the pike or whatever, they probably do get it right. But I would say that if you're a doctor right now and you were practicing during C-19 and you were being told to, this one day, this the other day, this the next day, and they were all not in agreement, and then you have the blood specialist telling you one thing, and then you have the virologist telling you another thing, and you're trying to shake it all out and shake it all down and break it all into the most base, common denominator. There was no common denominator that they could actually stand on. So it was just a matter of who are they going to sell out to be on the right side of not getting sued. And that's where I feel that they probably still are at this point. Do you trust your doctor?
Yeah, until I have a reason not to. Most doctors that I've been to haven't given me a reason not to. They haven't told me anything that didn't turn out to be the case. They examine the condition, they give their diagnosis, which is their opinion of what might be going on in my body, and it usually turns out to be that thing, and they prescribe a certain course of treatment that usually alleviates the condition. So
Yeah, that's true. Even most of the time you go in, it's a thing, antibiotics a week later and you're cleared up or whatever, and everything's good. But overall, from the, excuse me, top down for like this whole situation with the C-19, you had the political side of science, of the medical field and science at odds end, because we didn't always get the science, even though they said it was science. So just based on the scientific worldview of reality, you have to have a crack or a ding in your armor because of that.
well, I'll give you even better ammunition than C-19. Science has been, let's say, put into question decades before this by the scientists and philosophers themselves, by people studying quantum physics, by Thomas Kuhn, his book on the structure of scientific revolutions, Immanuel Kant, philosophically, David Hume. So there have been very, very difficult to challenge critiques of science in the past. So science is very aware of its limitations as a result of these critiques. And so what you're trying to say about COVID has been done better in the past by better thinkers than the modern people involved with COVID. But that doesn't mean within the domain that science does function in that it's not really good at what it does and really effective. It
Yeah, I
just means
agree.
that there's limitation because it's a human activity. We have human brains. We're limited by our humanness on how much we can penetrate into the mysteries of the universe right now. But within those limitations, we've created some amazing technology and we've transformed the world through our own efforts, just based on the understanding of it that science was able to give us up to now.
Oh yeah, I think we need science. I love science. I was a Next Generation guy. I loved Star Trek, and all science was the only class that I actually passed because I wasn't bored to death.
What
So
was your
anyway,
favorite science?
my favorite science was actually anatomy and physiology. But I like
Oh,
physical
nice.
science. Now I like. I don't know if it probably is, but I love physics. I think a lot of the neo physics nowadays is really kind of bunk, but I still like exploring that kind of stuff. It challenges the mind. It causes the mind to be creative in its thinking. I like all science. I will say that in terms of science as a whole, there are what do they call it? Uh, Different sects or factions or segments of science that are contradictory to one another. Say you have entropy, which is the quote unquote evolution of genetic evolution, and then you have like the geology, which is the study of rock formation and characteristics of the earth. And one would say that life is this many years old, and the other is going to say, well, it's many more millions of years old, and those two are almost in direct contradiction of each other. So one of them can't be completely right, and one of them can't be completely wrong. Of course, those are two different, biological versus environmental. But you can see, the geologist is going to say that the Earth is 4 billion years old, and really stand on that foundation forever. Whereas the entropy, because of the way that it is, uh, you can only have so many random neutral mutations. It's got a cap to it. It can only be so many years old.
I'm not familiar with what you're talking about. I I think most scientists agree on the age of the Earth.
Well, if you look at like the geological part of it, yes. But in entropy, what you have are it's a way of explaining kind of like adaptation or even the full blown species jumping evolution, where the quote unquote neutral, which I don't know how anything could be neutral and actually adapt, you would have to actually have a will to or a need to adapt. So that couldn't be neutral. That would be a need or a will. But you have these quote unquote neutral mutations that cause genetic kind of upgrades so that species or whatever could thrive in their environment.
You talking about like
But
random mutations and natural selection?
yeah, but they call them neutral mutations, not random.
Well, okay, but I mean they are random, or they seem to be. They seem to be random.
They seem to be,
and then
random,
some survive and some don't. The ones that are most adapted to their environment survive.
Right, but apparently that there could only be so many of those within a genome, meaning that they're eventually capped. So even that explanation or that fact being part of the theory, well, that's the exact opposite of evolution. If you're evolving, how can you be capped? So there's problems within certain fields, and certain fields do contradict each other. So, that alone is just to say that there are things in science that are just as questionable as, say, believing in Jesus Christ.
The problem with the Jesus Christ thing, if you're I'm actually going to touch on this next time I take up that essay, because we're going to dive directly into the Christianity part as a myth. You can't test Jesus Christ. Like science, there's nothing science can do to prove or invalidate Jesus Christ whatsoever, because it's that you can't. It's not observable. It's not testable. You can't show me Jesus Christ, and where I can see it too. So it's kind of out of the realm of science to begin with. It's in this other world of mythology that I keep talking about. It's not something that science that could even subject itself to science. Jesus Christ is mostly a character from stories, from a text. Outside of that, there's very little we could even point to and observe about Jesus Christ. We find him within this collection of stories that we call the Bible. Animated, I don't know how we would prove that kind of negative.
Are you familiar with like de-germination? Go ahead.
Of plants, like of seeds?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've germinated before. We used to germinate plants in school.
Okay, so you know that we don't have the full explanation of germination, or would you disagree?
I don't know enough about it. I know I've germinated, like it worked when I did it. I remember there was even a cereal that had these little germination kits as the cereal prize. It had these little seeds and these little plastic things that you put dirt in, and you could grow little plant shoots from these seeds. I thought it was the coolest cereal toy. So,
Nice.
like the germinating that I've done worked.
Yeah, and it does work. We know what it takes to have seeds germinate, and what the environment that is required in order for that to happen. But I could provide you evidence that of God based on germination, and this is my best evidence that I could give you. So I'm not going to fuck around and go through the whole thing. I'm just going to give you my whole shooting match in one crop. Okay. So until science can fully explain what's going on with germination, the burden of proof is on the non-believers, because God called his shot. And I'm going to post the scripture in the chat as soon as I pull it up here.
Okay.
So based on that, I'll just ask you the question. Do you think that you grew the seed, or do you think that God grew the seed?
I think the seed grew. Like it depends on what you mean by grow. I planted the seed. So in that sense, I grew the seed. I was responsible for the seed growing. Otherwise, it would not have. But I didn't actually do anything inside of the seed itself to make it grow. That was nature. But it sounds like you're headed toward the God of the gap arguments, which is science doesn't know everything. And so the unknown parts of science, people fill in with a hypothesis called God. But science itself just leaves that as an unknown until it has information it can work with to test it. It's not going to assume a hypothesis that it can't test. So science is very aware of gaps in its knowledge, but it doesn't substitute God as a hypothesis by default just because of that. It's fine with the gaps until it has a way to see into those gaps and study them more.
Okay, but you've got a problem now because God called his shot.
Is it you who makes it grow, or we that grow? That verse. What is Q, by the way? Is that the Gospel of Q?
No, that's the Quran.
Oh, okay. So this is Allah.
It's him.
Allah.
It's all him.
I don't know. Even in the Bible, he's not the same person. From book to book from testament to testament, and then in the Quran, he's even less of he's even another person. Because that's what happens with literary characters that are created by different authors and artists and humans among the ages. So, that's an interesting question. Is it you who makes it grow, or are we the grower? But it doesn't prove anything in the scientific sense of proving something.
Okay, but until science proves it, then he called his shot. So the burden of proof is on you. Here's where
until science proves it, it remains an unknown. And we talked about how when we're faced with an unknown, there's a tendency to mythologize and to create something outside of yourself. I mean, create something from yourself to explain that unknown, and you become what you create.
All you have to do.
So the scientific answer is we don't know, and then you are free at that point to fill in with whatever mythological answer you want, or to say it another way, to tell yourself whatever story you want, or to hypothesize, like substitute any hypothesis you want. But science is only interested in the ones you can test. So if you substitute a hypothesis that's not testable, then it's not in the realm of science anymore. It's in the realm of mythology or storytelling. Let's see. Fatty says, who watered it and nurtured it and played it, Bob?
This was written 1,500 years ago. He proved that God's word is false, is fully explained.
Well, we're getting into those different types of truth. Like, what are you talking about by false? Because the type of truth that science is concerned with is not the type that shows up in literature and art and books like the Bible. So to say God's word is true, it's true in one sense, but it's not true in the scientific sense.
All science has to do is fully explain germination, and God is dead. That's all.
Just wait around, because I'm sure my money's on science. I'm sure at some point they will fully explain germination. So if that's all it takes to kill God, then I don't I don't have a lot of hope for his survival.
You mentioned all the different names and the different ways that God is, addressed in the Bible and in the Quran and stuff, which I agree. We even see the Lord, the angel of the Lord, praying to God. So that's like, how does that happen? We don't, fully understand what's going on, but that is because Zechariah 14:9 has not happened yet.
And it's less about the different names than the fact that the characters of Yahweh, of God the Father, of Allah, even within the Old Testament, you could see different changes in Yahweh. It's fundamental changes in character and personality from book to book. So not even name, not even just, it's like this stable entity that people are just using different names for. The entity itself, the character, is palpably different depending on which part of the book you're reading or which book you're reading.
That's true. And then you have the solidifying of who he is by the glorification of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that sounds like myth to me, like a lot of mythologizing.
I mean, in other words, whenever God shows up or wants to reveal himself, it'll be as Jesus Christ. It won't be any other parts of like his name.
What about the dove, the bird, the Holy Spirit, and the tongues of flame and the rattlesnakes?
Right. So those all happen. Well, the if you're talking about like Pentecost, those all happened because of Jesus Christ and his causing of that or his name being invoked and causing of that. He's the one that is directing the Spirit of God because it's him. Just like in that in the scripture where it says, "Are you the grower or are we the grower?" Well, the "we" is there for a reason. Of course, Muslims would deny that, but that's what it is.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that has some kind of meaning for you.
I mean, and it's not like I'm actually coming at you that you're not a believer. I think that you do believe because, as a Satanist, you believe in something, right? You're just believing, in my opinion, in the wrong kind of thing.
But I don't believe in Satan as scientific truth. I believe in Satan as myth, as a story, as mythological truth. It's a story that gives my life meaning.
Okay, so if you believe in that part, then you have to believe in the other part of the story, which is to say that you are a believer, not an unbeliever. It's just that you're putting more weight on the one side versus the other side at this point still.
Yeah, but I don't believe it has an actual existence outside of the story. Just like Harry Potter or the Marvel Batman or whoever, they're a story and they give a lot of people's lives meaning, but they don't have an actual existence outside of the story. But that doesn't mean that they don't have value. And there are parts that, in fact, many parts of the Bible that also give my life meaning as stories. So you could say I'm a believer in the Bible and the Christian myth as well.
Right, that's what I was saying.
But as myth, as story, as meaning, not as truth.
Let me ask you this. How many authors are there for the Lord of the Rings or for Harry Potter?
Tolkien and what's her face, J.K. Rowling.
So one author for all those books, right?
Yeah, more or less, as far as I know.
Okay, and how many authors for the Bible?
Multiple, like tens, maybe hundreds.
Okay, and over how long?
Over centuries and thousands.
Okay, and yet they all are have the same narrative, the same subject, and the same
Oh no,
cohesion.
they don't. They're very diverse. Scholars have a very difficult time fitting all these pieces of the mosaic into one unified form.
Well, I mean, the Bible as we have it now, it's all based on the Yahweh of the Hebrew, the known God, all the way to Jesus Christ, right? There's a
Yeah.
common theme, and you have all those different authors over all those thousands of years, comprising these words, these stories, these scriptures, and how come Harry Potter couldn't do something like that? You know what I mean? I'm sure someone could take the mantle from that woman and say, okay,
Well,
I'm
look at all the
in this series,
fanfic
Harry
from
Potter.
like the Marvel universe or the Star Wars universe. They are kind of doing that. It's multiple different creators all working within the same universe off of a common narrative, but you get variations from creator to creator.
Mhm. And those are all based on what was previously written for the most part. Whereas, the Bible, say Old Testament prophets, didn't necessarily have access to written scripture or going to the same church or going to the same temple and collaborating. These were all just inspired by God.
Well, it
Through the
also
written.
they had oral tradition that it was passed down, and at some point it was codified and written. But so, and then at that point it became passed down textually. So, but they did have a tradition of transmission. It wasn't just random humans independently walking around, all being suddenly struck with the same story in their mind. It's connected by a tradition of oral and then written transmission after that. Unless you think the Bible was written all at once by Moses, like people used to think, as
No, I
one
mean,
work.
the Torah, was given to Moses according to the Quran. So I believe
Yeah,
that.
according to the story, like you're taking your evidence for the truth of it from the story itself, but not from anything outside of the story. So it's kind of tautological.
Yeah, but if you have two different sources collaborating each other, then it's more likely and probable that it's true than not. Versus, people just saying, "Oh, Moses never existed." Well, no, the Quran says that Moses wrote the Torah or whatever.
Well, the thing I plan to talk about next time in my little series is that it doesn't have to be factually true or historically true or scientifically true to have meaning. And you seem to be placing a lot of emphasis on the historicity of it and the empirical reality of it as a basis or foundation for the truth that you derive from it. And I think you can still make a case that it has truth and meaning for people without it needing to be historically or scientifically true. Because
Right.
because the type of meaning it has is not invalidated by not being scientifically or historically true. So you don't need to fight so hard for that historical backing of it. The type of truth it has can stand on its own without that. But it's a mythological truth. But that is just as fundamental to humans as the scientific kind. And that's the point I keep trying to make. Scientific truth is a very particular type of truth directed at particular objects or subjects and for particular reasons. There's particular things we get out of it. But that this other type is just as valid, but it just has different reasons and there are different things we can do with it than science. And keeping the two kind of in separate categories, I think clears up a lot of confusion and helps us to communicate about these things more easily as humans. So
Yeah.
what you to me your best course of action is to emphasize the mythological, the spiritual, the social, the cultural truth that the Bible can provide and not get caught up so much on the historical part of it.
All right.
Or even the scientific part, like with the seed germinating.
Okay, so I'm going to pretty much agree with everything you say, except that I'm going to say that the what you're calling the mythical kind of religious side, separate category. I agree with that. Is a slightly better the id to take because of the foundational cracks that have been shown and the contradictions that have been shown within science at this point.
I'll go further than that. I would say even if those contradictions were not in science, that it's still a course worth taking, independent and separate from science, not because of any flaws in science itself, but because it operates in a realm that science has no power over to begin with. And so we need something there. And for thousands of years in Western culture, that something was the Bible. And so there's no reason to displace it and replace it with something else when the Bible itself has served fine for thousands and thousands of years. And it doesn't even matter if there's contradictions or sciences or not, because even if science were perfect, I still think that we would need something like the Bible for all the things that science can't do, even if it were perfect. So to tie it to science at all, to me, weakens your argument. Like the truth in the Bible should be a truth so strong on its own that it doesn't need the support of science. It doesn't need any kind of historical verification to be true, because it's a powerful spiritual truth on its own that can stand independently of science and history, because it's a spiritual truth or a mythological truth.
Well, Jesus believes in science, and even in doctors. I posted a scripture there. So the thing is, God includes everything. He's an inclusive God, which includes science. Whereas science, by its very nature, is an exclusive. Exclusive. It solves problems by the process of elimination. So it's exclusive by nature. So I pose the question: which is actually the greater ideology?
It depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to create a computer or AI or a quantum computer or something, a nuclear weapon, science. If you're trying to grow as an individual, if you're trying to form a community of fellow humans, if you're trying to bring meaning to your life, use the Bible or use some other source of art that gives your life meaning.
Let's do a hypothetical. If you were, say, a regular American, dude growing up in a secular America, and you never went to church, your family wasn't religious, and you end up going to college and becoming a doctor, and then you are a young practicing doctor going through the C-19, I would have a hard time believing that your foundational confidence of what you know as a medical physician wouldn't have been shaken at that point.
Why would it be shaken by this one virus? I don't understand how this, which we pretty much understand now, just like we understand all the other viruses we look at and study. It's like how this one unknown virus would shake everything else that I know about science.
Well, what we know now, yeah, but back then everything was denied. That should have been pursued and investigated, and everything that was pursued and investigated. And
but that's not what you're talking about. Is not science. If I were a young doctor out of medical school, and I were taught anatomy and chemistry, and I was taught how certain diseases work and how to diagnose and treat them, and we have this unknown virus that shows up in 2020 that scientists are working on and studying, I don't know why that would erase all that other knowledge I got from medical school. I'm not drawing the connection between this one virus and all my past medical knowledge, how it suddenly invalidates that. All of that knowledge would still work. I would still be able to use it with my patients. I wouldn't say, oh my God, there's a new virus. I suddenly don't know how to be a doctor anymore.
I think that their confidence of what they know and their knowledge base was shaken. I think that they don't know. And
it wasn't shaken. Like all the knowledge they had before COVID still worked, and they still use it to this day. We new viruses show up all the time. If every time a new virus showed up, it erased all of the scientific knowledge, we wouldn't have science at all. That's ridiculous to think that new things show up in science constantly. It doesn't erase the body of knowledge we've built up until that new thing showed up. All it is a new virus, and it was in a category of viruses that we already did know about. It wasn't even like it was a completely brand new virus.
Right. It was a genetically modified, engineered virus, which was.
We don't know that. Yeah, that's a story, or you could say a myth. You have no evidence for that.
We definitely have evidence.
And Gateway Pundit and Alex Jones does not count as evidence.
No, I'm talking about Dr. Fauci and actual rubber meets the road testimony before Congress. And
that testimony before Congress is not science. Scientists engaging in the scientific method and studying things is science. So when we have enough scientists studying whether it was genetically engineered or not, then maybe we'll know. But right now, the freak from behind your computer, have no way of knowing that. That's just a hypothesis. That's just something you think.
That's not true, because I have to actually believe that under oath and given testimony before Congress under the threat of perjury, that Dr. Fauci
that doesn't make it science.
Funding the gain of function. He's the one directing where the funding goes for the science to be to occur in the first place. Okay.
But it doesn't even matter if it was engineered or occurred naturally, because neither situation makes your point that suddenly we don't know science anymore because of this one virus, that doctors suddenly don't know medicine. However the virus came to be, neither origin of it would support your point that it invalidated all of our past scientific medical knowledge.
My point isn't to say that it invalidated the science. My point is to say that it shook the confidence that people have in their doctors, and that the doctors had even in their own knowledge of science. Because what you had was the body politic saying one thing.
But it did. I don't know any doctor whose confidence. Okay, I don't know any doctor whose confidence was shaken, though. That's a big claim you're making.
When they couldn't even agree on hydrochloroquine or ivermectin or anything, they were basically told what to say and what they could and couldn't say, or whatever, had their medical license revoked or not. That is something that is going to shake your confidence as a practicing physician. I don't care who you are.
Well, it didn't. No physician I know had their confidence shaken by that. So I don't know who the doctors you're talking to are. In fact, next time I go to my doctor, I might ask him, was your confidence shaken over COVID? He's probably going to say no. I know how to treat all the other stuff I knew how to treat before. Okay, I don't know why. First of all, that's a psychological claim. You're making an inference of what you think is going on inside the head of every single doctor out there. So that's not even anything you can even verify. It's just a claim. But even psychologically, I don't know why that would shake a doctor's confidence.
Because when you get conflicting and contradictory information,
which happens all the time,
then that worldview that is your foundation is not as strong as it could be.
Science has that built into its worldview. Science knows that it's contingent and that new contradictions happen all the time, and new knowledge comes out of that all the time. Science already knows this. That's part of its worldview. So what you're saying, what you're claiming, a true scientist would say, duh, that's a normal part of science. It wouldn't make their confidence shake because they already know going into it that that's part of science.
So you're saying that they know already that they don't know, and that makes their confidence
Yes,
in the
yes,
worldview
yes.
more
Scientists know
confident.
that they don't know everything. Yes, yes,
Okay. Okay. I think I made my point.
yes. Ask any scientist, do you think you know everything? And they're going to tell you no. Besides, if science knew everything, there would be no more science. There would be nothing else left to study. Science is a process. If suddenly we acquired all the knowledge it were possible to acquire, there would be no more reason to even do science. So science itself is a process of constantly discovering new information.
Okay. So why put your id and your foundational worldview into something like that? What would be the point of doing that and still thinking that you are a confident person throughout your life, that you are standing on solid ground?
Because it mostly works, and it's given us the modern world we have today. Computers work. Science gave us that. Medicine works. Science gave us that. Cars, airplanes work. So we have direct evidence of the benefits of science. So it's given us enough to continue to be confident in it.
Fair enough. My argument is that the foundation of Jesus Christ as the worldview and as the identity of a person is the strongest id that a person could have.
And you could be right. Because the id's not even a scientific concept, but leaving that aside, you could absolutely be right, because I don't think that's something that science can answer. So science could still be science, and it could still do its thing, and what you just said could also still be true. I don't think science is even claiming to be a substitute for whatever you're calling the id, like people to found their spiritual life on.
It being like the ego, like the ego part of what Freud would talk about. But in Matthew 24 through 27, he talks about having the foundation being, Jesus being a house built on rock as opposed to sand. And that's kind of what I'm equating this to. But after what you just said right now, I'm wondering, when you were talking about in your intro the other day or yesterday, the challenging of someone's worldview outright versus kind of conforming to another person's worldview, maybe for influence purposes or whatever. When does that factor in then, in terms of having a worldview of science?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Like if you have two different people and they have kind of a supposed opposition to one each other's worldview or value system or whatever, and you're trying to convince another person, when does that when two people who say have science as their kind of their base worldview, when does that start to crumble to where they're being exposed and start expressing mythology?
Oh, like when does science itself start to break down?
Or just when two different worldviews start to oppose each other and one starts mythologizing to justify their worldview. Like when does that occur? Say if you're a geologist versus a anthropologist.
I think it would occur anytime somebody's trying to turn a critical eye onto something mythological and trying to tease out the fact and evidence behind it and to find explanations for it
Probably too vague of a question, actually. I probably need to come up with a better question. But
I personally wouldn't like if you have Jesus as your foundation or as your id, as you're saying, I wouldn't want to tear that away from somebody. Like that's probably there for a reason, and it's probably doing a lot of good being there. So I wouldn't want to use kind of a rational scientific mindset to try to tear that away from somebody and then leave their id with nothing in its place.
Yeah, I can understand that.
I don't think that's good for a person, and I don't think you're helping somebody by trying to do that.
Right. I understand that. What I'm saying is, if it's based on that as opposed to anything else, and I mean anything else, that anything else is eventually going to be shaken, whether it's in the science, medical field, whether it's in whatever, whether it's in, I don't know, take your pick.
Well,
at some point, it's going to be questioned and shaken, and you're going to be asking yourself, "Who am I?" all over again.
Yeah, I think that happens. I think that's a normal part of being human. I think at each stage of your life, you're asking that question. But I think one of my points in all of this actually is that. And I think Fry's point as well is that what he's calling this myth of freedom can't substitute for a myth of concern. What you're calling Christ and the id is the purpose of a myth of concern. That's what a myth of concern is designed to address. And that something like science is not able to take on that role. And so you're always going to science is always going to fall short when it tries to become the inner or spiritual or psychological foundation of you as a person, because that's not the purpose of the myth of freedom, which in our modern form is science. That you're always going to need some kind of actual myth to build yourself and your personality around, because science is not going to provide the enough of the substance that it requires, because it takes. That's not what science is. Science is a way of understanding the world. It's not a way of.
Yeah, it's a measurement.
It's not a way of becoming fully human or becoming who you are as a person. It's not a way of developing as a person. And for that, you need some kind of internal mythological story, whether it's the Christian one, whether it's the hero's journey, which is taken more from classical mythology. It's going to be some kind of story that arose within the culture that you're a part of. It's not going to be science. So people that are trying to make science be that thing at the center of their core, they're always going to be missing something, because what they need there is some kind of myth of concern. And I think people that over rely on science find themselves involuntarily filling in that space with something non-scientific anyway, whether it's psychology, like Carl Jung and the archetypes, whether it's mythology, whether it's social justice, wokeness, etc. There's going to be some non-scientific something that they're turning to that they might even think is science. But if you look at it closely, it has more of the features of myth than it does of science.
Yeah. Or love, or their marriage, or something.
Yep. Love, justice, art, beauty, religion, something. But it's going to be something other than just cold, hard logic and fact.
And also, I will say that there are some religious people that are the same way about holding on to their foundation and not considering science, which is the same crime in reverse order. So,
there is, and the only danger they run is the danger of colliding with actual reality. But that way of being is actually older than science itself, so it's a little more kind of
It
primal
helps
or
you feel.
fundamental to being a human, and so it's a little less weird than somebody trying to do that with science alone, because people have been getting by on the way you're talking about for centuries and centuries and centuries before science came along. And so if people are still doing that in the modern world, they're not doing anything that different from what humans have always done. The only danger they run into is when the modern world or the natural world collides with that attempt to only ground themselves in religion. But as long as they can like stay isolated and not have to confront actual reality too often, they can
Yeah.
keep that going, I think, longer than somebody that just tries to be purely scientific can without resorting to some kind of myth in the process.
Another ID, kind of worldview also comes just from the identity itself, like their ethnic group or their tribe or their country or nationality. That's another big one too for people.
Yeah, and if you look at all of those, they probably have some kind of cultural story that holds that nationality together too. So even that, there's some kind of mythological basis embedded in it.
Good point. Well, it was fun. I think I'm going to drop down now and
Okay, did you get what you came for?
I think so. I mean, I think so.
And next time I pick up this, whenever it is, maybe later this week or next week, a lot of what we talked about tonight is what Fry's going to cover, and we're going to delve specifically into the Christian myth and what kind of truth and value it has that's not science and not history, because it has a certain type of truth all its own. And so that's what we're going to look more at.
Look forward to it.
All right, freak. Take care. Right. It's fun.
Love you. Take care. Next time.
Okay. Love you too. All right. Well, that didn't go so bad. That was the big that was the big fight on the playground after school, the big battle royale of the century. And I think, yeah, not lost. I've been reading them. You ought to collect it and put it somewhere. I have a few suggestions where. No, you're this. Actually, I prefer this not loss than the woke political brain rotted not loss. 3 o'clock high. Yeah. No, that was a good discussion, freak. It keeps me on my toes. I hope it did the same for you. I like I said, being challenged. It might not seem like it all the time, but it does help me. I do appreciate it. So keep it coming. It helps me to understand more of my own positions and what I'm trying to say. Well, if just like with Cool Joe, if this is cool not loss, keep being this. That the political not laws is so derivative. I can find that person anywhere. This kind of stuff I can only find from not laws. Well, then why are you wasting your time being this complete tool online when you could be this? Yeah. I like the goof. I think this is a better look for you. And remember, this is a place where people can come and be themselves. So if this is the real you, this is what you should bring. So there, that's my challenge to you. All right, I feel like that was a full episode. I'm gonna wind it down and wrap it up and get the hell out of hell. Joe and I will be out tomorrow talking about straight men. So all of you straight men can show up and hear about yourselves. Not that we get a lot of gays. I was thinking about that the other day. For somebody that's gay, I sure don't get a lot of gays that come here. Like, they're not like, oh, he's one of us. Let's go support our brother, or he's part of our community. And I don't even get a lot of Satanists. Every now and then I get a few, but like my people, or what's supposed to be my people, are not showing up here. What I do get is a lot of straight men, a lot of Christians, and this is the important part, a whole lot of Spurgs, which are my people. So that tells me that neurodivergent men, that's the group I set out to find. That's the group I'm trying to help the most. And that is the group that's showing up here. So that is my community. It's not the gays. It's not even the Satanist. It's the Spurgs, the men, Christian, straight, whatever. That's what's showing up, and that's what I'm most relating to, and apparently that's what's most relating to me. I know this place is just overrun with homos. Just fairies everywhere. Nah. We'll see what happens tomorrow. I don't know what the topic is, so it'll be a surprise for me too. All right, take care, everybody. Have a good evening, and we'll be out tomorrow. That's a good point. Although sometimes the arguments themselves, the argumentation style can be kind of spurgy. I could think of a few names, but I'll be tactful for once. All right, take care, everybody. I'm going to go get some rest and get ready for my thing tomorrow, and then Joe and I will be out later tomorrow afternoon. Let's see, how do I do this? All right. Take care. Peace out, y'all. Go in peace and love and justice and beauty and truth and all that good stuff. And find your myth. We all need one. All right, take care.